Company.
Welcome to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Today is Thursday, December 7th, 2017. Let's get things started, blasting off with some interesting UFO reports. This UFO sighting took place in Dunnellon, Florida on November 21st, 2017. Briefly stated, it has been going on for maybe 20 years, the witness states. Always thought it was dreams. It has changed. The witness goes on to state, latest was 21st of November in the night. I saw a bright star out of place, or maybe I felt, I don't know, strange feeling. I was afraid. I know the feeling, like goosebumps, electric feeling in the spine. Hard to remember. Always the same fuzzy memories, like waking from a hangover. Woke up with pain in ear, strange smell like ammonia. It's hard to explain. I always thought it was a dream, nightmare. Last year, I got a dog to help. He made an accident on the floor and bit me when I touched him in the morning. This has gone on as long as I can remember, but now I know it is not a dream. Okay. Need to know if I can destroy it. I don't know what it is, but nothing has ever made me so afraid. I'm sure it does not mean me well. I am a combat veteran who served with the 82nd Airborne in Iraq in 03 through 04 and do not scare easily. I had a memory come back to me a few years ago of one in my room. I'm assuming an alien. Only time I can recall seeing it. Small, dark, thin. I knew I saw it, and I blacked out. I don't know if I'm repressing the memories or if I'm a little nuts. It is almost painful to try to remember and normally give up and go about my life. Lately, I wake up with bruises, cuts, rashes, allergic reactions. At this point, I am going to try to destroy them. Set traps. Ooh. Sleep with dog and a gun. I wish I could put more in here, but it's like I'm in a fog when I try. And then he goes on to say, please help me understand what is happening. And do you know if anyone has had success defending themselves, and if so, how? Thanks. Interesting. Put into a UFO report, though this sounds like a cry for help. I will lend my 2 cents on this and say, yes, people have had success in getting rid of these things. I refer people to my email, which is dusoutlander@gmail.com. That's DAS outlander@gmail.com. And my show, The Outlander. I do give people advice on these things on how to get rid of intrusive alien beings. It can be done. It really can be done. Go to my main website also, HeidiHollis.com, and I will definitely lend some advice to you. All right, next sighting. UFO sighting in Gap Mills, West Virginia. This occurred November 28th, 2017. The witness states, in brief, changed colors, pulsated. It split into 2 objects suddenly, then ascended with speed I have never seen before. The person goes on to state, orb descended quietly, pulsating colors of chrome, white, and purple, capable of erratic direction change, and made us feel a vibration in our chests. Suddenly, the object separated into 2 and ascended with speed I have never seen before. Wow. Our next UFO sighting, this occurred in Ottawa, Illinois on November 30th of 2017. In brief, the witness states, I observed a large star-like object absorbed into a smaller object. They go on to say, I was at work taking the trash out and noticed a bright star-like object in the western sky heading east at a slow, steady pace. When it was almost straight above me, I noticed a similar object coming from the north, heading south. Not as bright as the other, but moving much faster. They seemed to absorb each other, then disappeared. This happened roughly at 5:20 p.m. Whew, wild. Now, on to an interesting story on aliens and UFOs. This occurred at Atacama, desert lures astronomers and aliens, it is stated. Written by Mary Joyce. The article reads, it may look like a row of stacked bricks, but the ESO hotel at Cerro Paranal above in Chile's Atacama desert is very exclusive. Lots of money and immaculate credit are not enough to get you one of the hotel's 120 rooms. They are reserved for astronomers, scientists, and engineers who seek the desert's high elevation, clear, dry skies, and state-of-the-art telescopes to study the universe. While the hotel practically disappears from view in the desert sand, the views from the adjacent ESO Paranal Observatory can be spectacular. The photo that is shown shows some of the observatory's telescopes peering up at the Milky Way galaxy. And this article states extraterrestrials are also attracted to the Atacama desert, and there is a photo that shows a craft flying over the region. That is really an extraordinary pic. Another Atacama desert phenomenon is a 6-inch mummy nicknamed Ada or Ada, found in 2003. It was thought to be a hoax until 10 years later when two doctors at Stanford University examined genetic samples, x-rays, and CAT scans of the little creature. It is not a hoax, according to Gary Noland with the School of Medicine's Department of Microbiology and Immunology, and Dr. Ralph Lachman, author of Radiology of Syndromes, Metabolic Disorders, and Skeletal Dysplasias. Beyond Ada's size, here are other things the professors reported about the tiny mummy. 1. Ada only has 10 ribs. Humans have 12. The CAT scan clearly shows that Ada's internal organs, specifically lungs and heart. Ada's skull is proportionally much larger than that of a human. Ada's bones are well developed and are not those of a fetus. In fact, Dr. Lachman concluded that Ada lived to be 6 to 8 years old. Dr. Lachman also concluded that Ada's odd appearance was not the result of any known deformity, genetic defect, skeletal dysplasia, or any other known human abnormality. Surprisingly, DNA tests show that Ada's mother was a South American human, but no reports on Ada's paternal DNA have been made public. Wonder why. It might be significant that Bigfoot DNA testing revealed the maternal line to be human and the paternal DNA to be from an unknown primate. Perhaps in a similar way, a mystery humanoid eventually will prove to be Ada's father. Some native people in South America say they've actually seen live little creatures like the Atacama mummy. In fact, one mother may have caught the pixie-sized being with her camera when she was videotaping her toddler. There is actually a link to that to see her brief video. And notice the sound interruption when the Ada look-alike runs across the room. The mystery thickens. All right, now some dabs into some mystery and television. The history of EVP programming with Eli Lehrer on scripted expansion and Vikings Endgame. History Channel got off to a hot start in the arena under then-President Nancy Duboc, now A&E Network CEO, with a string of 3 big hits: miniseries Hatfields and McCoys, and the Bible, and the series Vikings. While history continued to debut a new miniseries every year between 2012 and 2016, most recently being Roots, the network did not greenlight a follow-up series to Vikings until Navy SEAL Drama 6, which had a strong debut this year, which was renewed for a second season. The network has since accelerated its scripted expansion, picking up 3 new series that are very fascinating. The Knights Templar, which is drama called Nightfall, Executive produced by Jeremy Renner, and the UFO-themed Blue Book from Robert Zemeckis, and the 6-part Bill Clinton impeachment saga, The Breach from R.J. Cutler, with installments about other U.S. presidents in the works as part of a planned The Commanders anthology series. As the first of the new batch Nightfall debuts, coming up soon, the network's new EVP programming, Eli Lehrer, spoke with Deadline, which is the author of this article, about the history's scripted strategy and the symbiotic relationship between its scripted and unscripted shows. He also addressed the glut of military dramas that followed the breakout success of Six, a possible Vikings end date, and spin-offs, follow-up series, and whether history would ever do a comedic scripted series. Deadline states, now that A&E has left the scripted field, will you broaden the scope of history's scripted series, or will it stay on brand with mostly projects based on real events and real people, they ask. Larry responds, one of the nice things about history as a brand, I think we have a competitive advantage in that scripted is very clearly defined. We're looking for fact-based stories that draw from history, but that's very broad because we have the full sweep of history to draw from. I don't think you're ever going to find history doing sitcoms or science fiction. There is such a wealth of stories to draw from that are right in our wheelhouse that I think as we expand our footprint in scripted, we're just going to continue to focus on those stories and go deeper. Deadline asks, you mentioned that you'd never do sci-fi, and yet you have Blue Book, which on paper sounds like a classic sci-fi series about UFOs. Lara says, the thing that makes Blue Book unique, and I think part of what makes what we can do in scripted unique, is that as opposed to something like The X-Files, which is probably an easy comparison some people will make, Blue Book is based on historical record. Obviously, there are some liberties we will take, but it is drawn from the real story of the U.S. Air Force's investigation in the early 50s into the UFO phenomena. Again, we feel like there's something that's part of our brand promise that not only will we create shows that are entertaining, but if we do our job well, will provide you with a deeper understanding of these chapters in history. Deadline goes on to ask, the subject matter of your scripted series span more than 1,000 years from the Knights Templar and the Vikings to present times. With the contemporary military drama, Six, how do you select which historic events to tackle in a scripted series format? Lara responds, we're open to any story that feels epic in scope and features iconic historical subject matter or characters. I think one of the nice things about history as a brand is we are able to use our unscripted track record to identify subjects and spaces that resonate with our viewers. And that's part of what we did with Vikings. It's part of what motivated Nightfall. We had seen the programming about the Knights Templar and continually worked for us. And that's part of what motivated Six. We've seen the Special Forces programming and military-themed programming in general have worked over the years in the unscripted space, so it felt like it was a core part of our brand and what we had been presenting to our viewers. It felt logical to take on that subject in the scripted space. Deadline goes on to ask, was there a link between any unscripted series you've done about Roswell and unexplained phenomenon that led to Blue Book? Lara goes on to state, that's absolutely part of the same thought process. We've seen shows about UFOs and aliens work consistently on the channel across the years. Ancient Aliens is one of our longest running and most successful shows, just to use one example. So it did feel like the subject of the unexplained is absolutely something that resonates with our audience. And once Blue Book came to us, it felt like a very logical place for the brand to go in the scripted space. Deadline asks, after History 6 came out, 3 other military drama series were launched by the broadcast networks, NBC's The Brave, CBS's SEAL Team, and the
Everything on sale up to 75% off at New York & Company this weekend. Every single thing, including sweaters, outerwear, gifts, new arrivals, and every style from our Ava Mendez and Gabrielle Union collections. Plus, today only, we've got $9.99 velour separate, 73% off. So many colors to choose from. Get one for everyone on your list. Plus $9.99 yoga pants, $19.99 jean leggings, and more doorbusters starting at $5.99. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York & Company.
CW's Valor. What do you think about the increased competition in the space? Lara goes on and states, I suppose it was flattering. I think we took pride in the idea that we got there first and that there were a number of critics who recognized that Six had done it at a very high level. We're obviously very proud of its success, that it was the second highest rated scripted premiere in cable. And we're very excited about season 2, which is finishing production now. I think you always worry that a space will get saturated, but we really believe in the creative vision. William Boyce Jr. and that team are confident that they've made an even better second season, so we are bullish on growing the show even more. Deadline asks, with A&E going unscripted, will history increase the volume of its scripted portfolio? Will you get to a point where an original scripted series will be on the air at any time during the year? Lara goes on to say, I think the hope is by next fall you'll see us with 4 scripted series in production. Vikings, 6, Nightfall, which premieres soon, and Blue Book, which will be on the air in 2018, as well as the limited series. I think the focus is really on getting Nightfall and Blue Book to be as successful as Vikings and Six, and to make the limited series like The Breach a regular occurrence. We'll go from there. What's interesting about history is there aren't many cable channels that have managed to succeed in both the scripted and unscripted spaces. I think you could probably count them on one hand. This channel has been very thoughtful and selective about how we expand our footprint into this space since Nancy first got us into scripted with Hatfields and McCoys in 2012. I think we're on that level with Vikings and Six, and hopefully a third with Nightfall after this week. My hope is that it's now clear to the production community and to our audience that we're fully committed to being a premium scripted destination and a worthy home for the best historically based projects that are out there. Deadline asks, since you have both scripted and unscripted programming on the air, are you thinking about doing more unscripted tie-ins for your scripted series like after shows? And since unscripted shows have inspired you to pursue some of your scripted series, would you commission unscripted series on the same subject to be paired with or run around your scripted series? Lara responds, I wouldn't call them after shows in the traditional sense, but we've certainly found that when a viewer comes to us for a show like Six, they're often interested, whether it's before the scripted premiere or after, in watching nonfiction programming on a similar topic. We saw a good amount of success around Six last season with other Navy SEAL-themed documentaries and programming, and we're doing some of that with Knights Templar programming to go around Nightfall in the next few months. Certainly with Season 2 of Six, I would expect us to do additional military-themed programming because, as I mentioned, that is something that has traditionally worked for us, even independent of scripted premieres. Deadline asks, besides potential new installments of The Commanders, there has only been one other project in development that has been announced, Travis Fimmel's Wyatt Earp anthology series. Do you have others in the works? Lara goes on to state, we're just starting up a new development cycle. We've identified subjects and spaces that feel exciting and interesting and unexplored to us. So we're very much in the process of refilling the scripted series pipeline. That is a huge focus for our scripted team in the coming months. Deadline states, if that development leads to series greenlights, will you go beyond 4 scripted series on the air? Lara responds, absolutely. Deadline asks, With Vikings on the air for so long, you must be thinking about potential spin-offs or companion series since it's such a vast world. At one point, the Viking story will end, and it's a good idea to create a franchise. Lara states, I think Michael Hurst is so busy writing the episodes that we've ordered that I can't imagine he's had time to think about spinning it off. So the answer is, at this point, we haven't had conversations about anything beyond how we can get more episodes of Vikings itself. Series creator Hurst writes every episode of Vikings, which has been producing 20 episodes a season in its most recent seasons 4 and 5. It's a monumental undertaking, but he does it with a shocking degree of ease. Deadline asks, have you thought about an end game or date for the show? Lara states, I think only Michael knows where it's going to end and how it's going to end at this point. Deadline asks, you mentioned you would never do a comedy, but there's a way to do a comedic take on history, like Monty Python, for example. It's a little different, but it's a comedic take on history, something that you would rule out? Lara says, I think we've always infused humor into some of our unscripted shows. I'm just not sure a comedic take on history is necessarily what the audience is coming to us for, which is not to say I don't love Monty Python or Mel Brooks' History of the World, but I don't know if we're the best platform for that kind of programming. Wow, pretty cool. Then on to some paranormal points. A man sees Bigfoot in the Oregon wildfire. The article states, a North Carolina resident never dreamed a September hiking trip to Oregon would end up being one of the highlights of his life, especially since raging wildfires throughout the West Coast cut his trip short. But Sam thinks it is because of those fires that he saw something he will never forget. He goes on to share his story. It took me a good 2 minutes before I even wrapped my head around what I saw in that Oregon fire. It was surreal, but there's no doubt in my mind it was a Bigfoot. Since then, there hasn't been a single day that incident hasn't crossed my mind at least once. Everything was prearranged for my trip, but when the plane kept circling the airport because of smoke and limited visibility, I knew my trip was ruined. I immediately canceled my guided trips and hotel reservations. All I wanted to do was get back to the East Coast, but everyone else had the same idea and I couldn't find a flight. To make the best of a bad situation, I rented a car and headed to the coast where I thought the ocean breezes would keep the smoke at bay and I might be able to get a flight. I quickly realized the fires were closing in faster than I could imagine. I had to turn back. At that point, I knew if I was going to get a flight home, I had to get to Portland. So as the fires were closing in from 3 directions, I studied the map and found a road right between the fires. Calculating the forward speed of the fires and the 100+ miles to the only airport where flights were still getting out, I felt fairly confident I could make it through to the other side of the fires before the road became impassable. It was a good wide road, straight and flat, but there was about 90-mile stretch with just nothing. It was kind of scary, knowing the fires could leap up at any time. Then after driving 30 to 40 minutes, I saw a fairly wide grassy area on the side of the road. About 20 feet beyond the grass was a steep 6 to 8 foot embankment. All of a sudden, like out of nowhere, there it was. It was on 2 legs, but I could tell it wasn't a man or a bear. It was a Bigfoot, without a doubt. It was covered with hair and hunkered over with its long arms extended out from its sides, as it was trying to catch a smaller animal that was kind of trapped against the embankment. I think it probably was an older Bigfoot because it appeared to be bald, or maybe the hair on the top of its head was just thin and gray or light colored. I don't think the Bigfoot noticed me because I didn't stop and get out of my car, and because it was so focused on catching that little deer or dog or some kind of small animal. After that, I drove like 2 minutes before I even took a breath. I was kind of scared, knowing there was nobody else around except the Bigfoot and raging wildfires. An experience like that changes your whole thinking about the world. I bet. We think we're it, and nothing else comes close to being human. That's wrong, and I'm still trying to get my head around that. But I know what I saw. I do regret, though, that I didn't stop to get a better look at the Bigfoot. But at the time, I really felt like I was running for my life, and I didn't want to get trapped and die. And our final paranormal story is entitled The Boy Who Helped E.T.s with Their Garden. The story states, throughout his life, Raul Manuel was taken from his tiny Maya village in Belize to a floating disc in the sky to help extraterrestrials with their garden. They needed his botanical knowledge, which he began learning as a toddler from his grandfather. By the time he was 9, he knew enough to be helpful to the ETs, so they beamed him on board. Raul first described the ET craft as a huge silver sombrero with 3 levels. At the top were the men who operated the city. In the middle level, there was an eating place and a relaxing place. On the bottom was the garden and resting places. He states, the garden was located along the back side of the disc and contained trees and plants from all over the world. There were birds, some I had never seen. A water tank kept the plants alive. Sometimes they sent smaller craft to collect water. Each time I went there, I taught them about plants. I taught them as my grandfather had taught me about our medicine. They encouraged me to point out medicine plants to them in the forest. They would gently dig them up under my guidance, and later I would plant them in their garden in the sky. As a man, the ETs gave Raul the title of Earth Advisor. And in his village, he became a respected elder because of his wisdom and knowledge. Near the end of his life, Raul shared his uniquely positive abduction story with Dr. Artie Sixkiller Clark, a professor at Montana State University. He told her details about the ETs, about Earth people and Sky people working together on the ship, and about traveling to the ET's home planet, which had been drastically impacted by a catastrophe. You can read Raul's entire story in Chapter 3 of Dr. Clark's book, quote, Sky People, which is available on Amazon. Fascinating story. Well, thank you for listening to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Be sure to check out UFOHeadlineNews.com every single day. And also tune into my other weekly 2 shows. I co-host on The Kevin Cook Show. That is on Tuesdays. And I host my own show called The Outlander every Friday. Both shows are 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. And you can catch my paranormal comic strip, The Outlanders. Direct links can be found by way of HeidiHollis.com or just go to InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Remember always to keep an open mind so you can stay informed and inspired.
Everything on sale up to 75% off at New York & Company this weekend. Every single thing, including sweaters, outerwear, gifts, new arrivals, and every style from our Ava Mendez and Gabrielle Union collections. Plus, today only, we've got $9.99 velour separate, 73% off. So many colors to choose from. Get one for everyone on your list. Plus $9.99 yoga pants, $19.99 jean leggings, and more doorbusters starting at $5.99. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York &